hello again. So, what happens when we think about gaming as a capability instead of a category? In this session, you'll hear from Manon and Dave about how the BBC is applying game-native thinking in unexpected places, from Signals, an interactive television layer that turns the TV into a shared, playable experience, to Pathfinder, an initiative that reimagines how the next generation of creative talent is discovered and developed. Joining this conversation is game UX strategist Celia Hodent, whose work has helped shape the player experience across the industry. Let's welcome our next speakers to the stage.
Hi everyone, hope you're doing well.
Hey, hey.
Despite the rain and stuff.
Hey. Yeah, thank you guys for making it out here. I definitely got drenched. Lesson not to wear this when I come out here.
I'm still all wet, so it's like...
Well, thank you for joining me, Celia, on this talk as well. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah.
And if we don't mind, I would love to start with a round of applause for Susanna and the team as well, because it's been an amazing day so far. So congratulations to the whole Games for Change team. I actually, by the way, double congratulations, because anybody who can like normalize me playing like Pokemon X outside during the break is awesome. I just managed to get through 2 of the Elite Four, so big up that whole crew. Thank you. So my name is Manon, and I've been building tech and storytelling meets technology meets, I guess, culture for 20 odd years. My mom thinks I work in IT. I say I make cool shit, and the kind of cool stuff that I've managed to make cross-industry, not in gaming actually, kind of spans rather education, entertainment, product design, and more broad stroke innovation. And actually, I was here in 2018. I only just realized that I attended Games for Change back in 2018 on the command of my boss, who at the time, I was working in the education industry, had me building a smart speaker for kids to learn English as a second language. And since then, that kind of realization of gaming as almost like a platform, or rather the console in and of itself, as to how culture can be integrated into technology products, and storytelling can be woven into experience and multiplayer experience, really has taken me around the world. And I've been working with amazing people, many of whom are my idols. And but it didn't start that way. This is where I grew up. This is a place in North London called Barnet. It's a council estate, which sounds like a big regal home, but it's obviously not. It's what we call the projects. My home is the one. It's the Yai in Yikes. That's where I grew up. That's my house, and so yeah, it was pretty rough around there. You know, it was more of a kind of like get your education indoors as well as outdoors situation. And this is what was going on inside my home. I was just nerding out, giving away my age now, but on my Sega Master System, trying to crack Alex the Kid, which was the built-in game, and then like the 2 that my family bought me during that life cycle, which was awesome. And I also was, yeah, just kind of like an early stage nerd during that period. That's me at age 4. I was very much into Spider-Man and the kind of comic book world. I was really into other types of games, sports, football in particular. And then the kind of competitive nature of hip hop. I had a really bad babysitter who'd like play me cassettes with all the explicit lyrics, East Coast, West Coast beef. And then obviously the Wu-Tang Clan, being from Staten Island, became my favorite because it was the multiplayer version. It was literally, you know, all of these guys able to kind of, despite not necessarily being the most skilled individually, grapple with what the titans were of that world. So I just really immersed myself in that and wanted to make music. And early in my career, after working as an engineer in kind of the advertising world, I started to apply some of that, I guess, in hindsight, game-like thinking to products that I was building, because I was a failed musician, basically, and I just wanted to do something in the music industry. And so I designed this thing called Machine, which was a kind of a mashup between this device that I always wanted to buy called the Akai MPC. Are there any music makers, beat makers in here? Okay, so a few people might recognize this, but I had this vision that one day I was gonna buy this MPC thing, which cost like $3,000. We could never afford it. And so I started developing this thing, which ended up being Machine for this company. And then in recent years, and in the last couple of years, this guy Fred again, I don't know if anybody's seen or heard of his music, he's turned it into his predominant instrument. So I'm going to play a short clip of it and then kind of try and explain the sort of game-like thinking that I tried to apply in hindsight at the time.
Totally, we can go totally live. And you can do that like stutter shit, but then you can play the whole thing. Like the whole track at this point comes from. Do you know what I mean? Don't stop.
So that's Machine, and obviously anybody who knows anything about anything knows that that dude's just playing Street Fighter 2 on Mega Drive there. Right? It's button bashing meets hand-eye coordination meets just the simplicity of understanding an instrument slightly differently than the skill that I would need to be a drummer. And that led to further evolutions of applying that thinking. I designed something called the Rolly Seaboard, which then took sort of my, I guess, ethnic side. My parents are African and Indian, and I'm hearing all of this really melodic music that I wish I could create but can't, and developed this thing that's basically based around the piano keyboard, but allows you to sort of bend notes by simply playing in between them. Just the simplicity of onboarding somebody like myself into a world of creation and exploration. And then these dudes called like MoMA hit us up and were like, yo, can you guys come and show this here? I thought MoMA was a Pokemon, to be honest. And yeah, we ended up having it here in New York, where one of my heroes, RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, ended up using it. And if you guys have seen La La Land, you might recognize it from this thing that we had to show this dude, Ryan Gosling, how to play the piano, and he plays it in the film. But more importantly, that became the format through which Apple felt there could be a physical device to partner with the most distributed music onboarding platform in the world, which is GarageBand, which we all have, many of us have in our pockets right now. And it became a tool to help kids learn how to make music, how to essentially start making music through this kind of gamified approach, if you like. I know we hate that word, but approach to learning a skill that is otherwise, thousands, tens of thousands of hours in the process. And all of this led back to, and this is why I'm excited to sit next to Celia here, this idea that was often bandied around in my household. Is anybody of Indian descent here, or Gujarati background in particular? Yeah, I'm making up the numbers here. That's awesome. Yeah, wicked. Big up the diversity crowd. I'm the one here, the 1%. So this says "Ramta Ramta Sikse," which is a phrase that parents and grandparents often say. When a kid's trying to figure something out, or you're trying to teach something to a kid, and they don't quite do it the right way. And my granddad would say "Ramta Ramta Sikse," which directly translates to, weirdly, play, play, learn. Almost a prescribed ancient framework within like Indian subculture, which is illustrating how we apply the kind of super components. If you take this idea of like the big debate right now, which I'm trying to avoid using those two letters, but you know what I'm talking about, of I guess the artificial way of building things and the very human and innate components that we have of just discovering through play. And at some point, somehow, and Celia and I had this discussion just a couple of days ago, we forget actually that this component of play is so essential in our expression and experience of everything. So in this world, if like Superman is the superhuman, if you like, and play, play, learn is the kind of methodology that we believe is the way for us to start thinking about not just gaming and developing great games, which all of you guys are the experts in, but just developing human-centric experiences, then maybe the kind of artificial, cool, like, tools that we've developed to help us along the way are simply there in a slightly different framework, quite literally the one used to train them, which is kind of like learn, learn, serve, because that's the process of building those things. And so all of that stuff got applied to BBC Future World Design, this project, this team that I've built, and the first big success of which, and one of the reasons I'm here, is because this year we deployed something called Signals, and a lot of it was inspired by the kinds of interactive components that game makers have started to weave into the experience thanks to the community, things like Twitch. And in the UK, we had this thing called teletext back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, before the internet, which was essentially interactive content on your television set delivered over the aerial. It was just like a browser window in front of what you were watching. But weirdly, when the internet arrived, now people are spending millions of dollars on second screens and whatever, when in fact what should have happened is that game-like interactive experience should have become multiplayer, and it should have just melted onto the content. And so we did that this year with Wimbledon. We debuted it at Wimbledon, and essentially what it is a content agnostic overlay that enables multiplayer-like experiences for all of the content that you might be watching, whether that's a game show, whether it's a documentary. It enables quizzes, polls, other types of interactive components where you as an individual or people across the country can simultaneously be participating in it. And as we get to sort of the end of this sequence, you'll see a couple of other deployments. A scary one, for example, in the debates is fact-checking somebody whilst they're actually speaking, and then getting a poll on the sentiment of what's going on. But this is what we deployed this year live with Wimbledon to 2 million homes, which was really awesome. And what we realized afterwards is that the appetite continues. We finally ended up actually building this in-browser version of playing back that content, all of the data points that were captured, as a arcade-style replay of what you already saw, or as a way of playing kind of like a Virtua Tennis type experience, but of the current form of that individual player, which is something that not even the connected game versions, the big multi-million-dollar versions do. So being able to kind of apply this type of thinking to other content outside of the game industry, I think is something that all of the brilliant minds in here and across this festival really are in a prime position to do. And we want to try and help usher more of that in. So the last thing I'll say before we have a discussion with Celia is, I'm curious as to where the other people who are really shaped by the culture that you guys have created in this industry are, and how they can apply the thing that otherwise becomes a hobby in the background, frankly, that set of skills that are soft skills and things that we sometimes exercise when we have some free time, and turn that into hard skills. And so Pathfinder is an effort by the BBC to help young people illustrate those skills that they've developed through gaming, attention to detail, creative thinking, problem solving, and deploy those in industry, and in industry which is, in general, really kind of decimated in many ways when it comes to job opportunities, and are really only looking for folks with certain skill sets. So I'll stop there. Thank you for bearing with that background, but I think it's important to illustrate that there's a whole host of new people that you guys have opened up the games world to, especially in the ways of thinking, and I'm honored to be here and to be able to speak about it. And Celia, you've occupied this space for a lot longer than me, and have been spending a lot. I know you're spending a lot more time thinking about this space. I know you've been at Games for Change for a long time. What's wrong with people like me? Like, why is it that we are so obsessed with the thing? We have the itch that we want to scratch, which just simply cannot be a hobby and needs to be applied logic to the worlds that we're building adjacent to gaming.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You are what we call a creative person. It's really fascinating to listen to your background and all the things that you did and how you mix things. There was something that you wanted to use and you could not use because you didn't have any much money, but you had a background in engineering, and so you thought you could just do it by yourself. And this is, where you're talking about if gaming is a console, what are the games? What I prefer to think of it in a different way is like playing. Everything is about playing, and playing is basically about experimenting and just mix things. What if, like for example, sometimes we play and say, what if I was a different person, or what if we were apply this thing in a different situation? And this is what people like you, like creators, can do, and this is really what can lead to innovation. when you create a new piece of technology and it meets your audience.
Yeah.
And there's actually nothing wrong with that. It's actually wonderful, and this is what we need to foster and to really nurture at school and in kids, this ability to have a space to experiment.
Yeah.
And so this is really what being playful, and when we talk about game-based learning, we talked about this quite a bit this morning. It's really, I love to think about it as playful learning. Just think about just playing around with things. And you're a musician. We also say playing music. So music is also an experimentation with sounds and beats. And so all of this is the same area.
Yeah.
It's just like being able to experiment. And this is something that we absolutely need, in my opinion, to push much more at schools and education, like a space for the kids, but also for the adults, to just express themselves and experiment in such a way that creativity can spark.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point because a lot of what I've noticed, especially in Europe, is even the things that I used to have access to as a kid, the social clubs, the places where I would discover new games, for example, that we didn't have at home because there was no internet, right? So you had literal cartridges. A lot of those things disappeared. They're no longer available to young people. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you as well is, how do we then take some of those things that were developed through play, some of the column I had under the Superman bit, you know, the empathy and the imagination and imaginative thinking, and these things which are often considered soft skills, which I've got a real gripe with, how do we start to get industry, and I feel like in the gaming industry it's probably better appreciated than outside, or maybe I'm wrong, but how do we get people to start taking those things seriously as hard skills? Because what we're describing is those are the things that we should encourage from a young age, but really my argument is we should be encouraging it in the workplace, because without play, there's no discovery.
Yeah, so a lot of people understand that this is really important, and actually there's some studies that showing that when you play a collaborative game, it can foster empathy. So people, I think, understand it's valuable and it's important. The problem is that we have a tendency in our world, and especially in the West, to think that what is important needs to be measured.
Yeah.
And hard skills can be much more easily measured than soft skills. And I think this is much more of a problem, that people don't really understand how to measure this, and so it goes through the cracks because they don't have a good way to really get a hold of it. And so I don't know how to solve for that, because it means that we need to change a little bit as a society to really rethink things. It's not because it's not easy to measure that it's not valuable.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit difficult to go around it unless we change our way of thinking. Just like in the West, we have a tendency to think about failure as something it's not okay, where we need to fail to learn, and it should be rethought as an iterative process, and it's part of the process.
Well, that's kind of the goal behind Pathfinder, is really that initiative to say, and we have a framework which we're collaborating with the University of Cambridge. If there are any folks who make games here specifically for education and or the kind of assessment of people's skills, please do come and speak to me. I'd love to hear. But that's exactly the goal, is that there must be a way, and I'm not a pedagogical expert, but I believe that there is a way in us, not necessarily like passing or failing people, but certainly assessing people's ability in those buckets as developed often by gaming and gaming culture. And I guess on the kind of sort of semi-ethical part of all of this is, how much of an appetite is there within the world of gaming to also tackle that problem? Or, you know, is engaging outside of the industry of game making and the purity really around the storytelling around these things, is that in somehow direct conflict with the kinds of things we're talking about? Or do you feel that actually that's exactly what the industry is ready for?
It's a good question. I think right now the industry is just trying to survive.
I hear that.
I mean, it's really hard to make games, and that's the things that I usually tell a lot of people who want to get into game-based learning. Sometimes the answer, if you want to bring play to learning, is not necessarily building a game, because building a game is extremely difficult.
Absolutely.
I am a UX strategist, so I work in UX strategy, and it's all about making sure that what we're trying to create is actually what users, so in our case players, really experience, and it's extremely hard to do, even if your goal is only to entertain. And so in our case, in many of those initiatives, we don't just want to entertain, we want to entertain and teach people and make them manipulate new things, experiment. That's extremely, extremely difficult. So I think a lot of people care about this, and there's a room for it, and there's a lot of attempts to try to do that. But at the end of the day, it's really, really difficult to do.
Yeah.
Or sometimes just having a playful approach and let people tinker around, experiment, and just foster that can sometimes be a little bit easier. So I don't know if that is answering your question.
No, it does. I mean, I guess the appreciation of gaming as an industry, a platform, and a mechanism really to teach. And look, I'm evidence of it, meaning I learned a lot of the things I know how to do because of just the fascination of how a particular game was made, or how a particular a game was, or the storyline of a particular game. So I just believe that there are many, many more young people now, more than ever, I would say, that see it as obviously a hobby and something that they do, and some people take it very seriously. It's a profession. Yeah. But equally, I think that, if anything, that amplification of the value of gaming is more obvious than ever. So in a scenario like that, especially with gaming is not the only industry suffering, of course, but in an industry that has been affected by the economics of everything, how do adjacent industries like broadcast media and sports and music, who have their own struggles, but in some ways, well, live entertainment is at a premium now and is going to continue to rise, I believe. How do we participate in ensuring that the best qualities of gaming can
That's a great question, and yes, please participate. We need you. I'm a big fan of Seymour Papert. I don't know if anyone here knows Seymour Papert and his work. Yeah, woo, okay, thank you. That's fun. What he was doing is what's called constructionism. Just long story short, what it is, it's thinking about learning by doing or by playing. And the idea, like Papert was, I don't know, like I'm getting old, but when I was a kid at school, we had these computers, and we were using the logo language. Does that ring any bell to anyone? So with the little turtle, and you had to do stuff with the turtle, advance the turtle, and you could draw with the turtle. And the beauty of this, even back in the day, it was back in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, it was thinking about what do children care? Instead of just thinking about how can computers or games or whatever can teach children, it was thinking about what do children care about. So, young children, they love drawing. And so the idea was to allow them to draw, and they would use the computer by programming the computer to draw what they wanted to draw. So for example, if you wanted to draw, let's say, a house, let's say that your foundation, like the base, the foundation of a house is a square. If you want to teach the computer to draw a square, you need to understand the geometry and what are the property of a square. So you have to do, like, let's say, advance 100, turn 90 degree, then go 100, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was the beauty of it. It was not teaching the kids about geometry rules through just like broccoli with chocolate on top of it. It was just enabling the child to do what they care about.
Yeah.
Just thinking about what is it that they're going to be passionate about, and allowing them to experiment through that and just learn things through their play.
Yeah.
And this is what you can do. Like, kids, they love a lot of things. Like there's a game I love, is a Kerbal Space Program. It's super cool to launch rockets into space. And so they just let the kids do what they love to do and just tinker about and experiment, and we can enable this. So think about all these different things that appeal to kids: sports, rockets, dinosaurs, you name it. And then think about what you can bring and the excitement and what you can enable, rather than just thinking about how we can make a game and just like put chocolate on top of broccoli.
Well, I think, like I say, skills development is an area that I'm super passionate about. In the couple minutes that we have left, I mean, one last question I had for you, which is one that, I'm, especially when I speak about things like AI or whatever, like, it's often the kind of conversation where you're going to get led down the garden path of, tackling ethics and other things. But in gaming specifically, I think one of the awesome, refreshing things that I've experienced last night and here today are the folks in the room and in the breakout rooms really building with purpose. So I met a gentleman who's really focused on indigenous storytelling in games. I've met another group of people who've been building games that sort of as open world exploratory games as they are, they're really the underbelly of the narrative is around conservation and climate. And then there's games really that I think expression of self-identity, and it's always been the case in my experience anyway, that games are a really good platform for exploring those types of topics. When we start weaving in things like these adjacent industries, which, especially the world that I come from, how do we make sure that we, again, preserve what's been great about games in the sense that it's for everybody? And that component, I feel like, is hotter now than ever, that games have become not just multiplayer, but almost social in nature. How do we preserve that?
Yeah. So how we enable that, because sometimes it's not even enabled. So we don't have a lot of time to dive into this question. There's so much to say.
Yeah.
And I think games can be really great at this, make us explore things that we don't necessarily know about. So two of my favorite games from recent times is South of Midnight and Reloaded. Both of them are here. If you haven't played them, I recommend you to take a look at them. Games have to be, if we really want to use games for learning and to be part of the culture, it has to be inclusive. And making it inclusive is not gonna happen just because we want it to be inclusive. It takes a lot of work. And the reason why is because the human, by definition, is biased. We have a lot of biases, and it's extremely hard for us to get out of these biases. We have, for example, the in-group bias. We have a tendency to favor the people who seem to be in the same group that we are. And so all these things are extremely hard to get over with, and we also want to make games who are accessible to everyone. This takes a lot of methodology. It takes you have to be careful with this. You have to be really, it's a voluntary and intentional design that you have to do to make it happen. And so to answer your question in the fastest way I can think of, if we want to make it happen, we just need to understand all the things that can go wrong. And that's why the initiative that I'm working on, Ethical Games, so if you're interested, go on ethicalgames.org. It's looking at all the things that can go wrong, both for players but also for game developers, because there's also a lot of problems also in terms of inclusion in the game industry. And the idea is to be intentional with what we do and understand what's going to happen if we make a game and we don't represent everyone. Are people going to feel excluded? Can it serve discrimination in some way and just perpetuate tropes that are really harmful for certain people? We have to think about these things, and just being saying that I'm not like this person, I care about those games to be for everyone. Even if we have good intention, it's not going to be enough. So if we want to do that, it has to be purposeful. We have to follow a certain methodology. We need to have people that help us, like accessibility specialists, for example, or people are going to look into if it's inclusive for everyone. So all these people are going to be really important. And it's important to have them on your team so that your team is inclusive, so that you can actually
That's awesome.
that.
No, that's fantastic response and amazingly done within the time frame. I guess I'll just, we're at 10 seconds, but I'll just leave you guys at least with my thought on answering this question, which is semi-rhetorical, because I'm a big, as I've tried to illustrate anyway in this short time, I'm a massive believer in this industry and the way that gaming culture has shaped entire generations of people in all industries. And I think we are reaching a point, even if the economics don't say it quite yet, that gaming and game-like thinking is one of the key tools, especially for a group of young people entering industry now, to apply that participatory, multiplayer, connected storytelling, to really all of the genres of games that exist, which are politics, sport, music, entertainment, culture, climate, and many, many others. So please keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for having us, and thank you, Celia, for joining.
Yeah, thank you. I would say it's important today more than ever. Yeah. Thank you so much.